Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and I'm once again joined by my good friend Blake Schneiders, now a producer at 610 Sports Radio, and we're going to give you our initial thoughts about Super Bowl 57. Blake, it has been a long time since we've got on a podcast together. My initial question for you is, how you doing?
Buddy, I am fantastic. I'm even better now that I get to see your smiling face, brother. You look fucking great. College is clearly treating you well, so that's awesome.
I'm just trying to survive, man. It's been rough, but, the Chiefs are winning, and that's been awesome. So, this game, Chiefs versus Eagles, the two best teams, I would argue, in the NFL going into this game, both 1 seeds. I saw some stat, I think it was by Field Yates, that they had the same amount of wins and losses, the same amount of points, the same amount of everything. They're a very equal team, but that doesn't mean that one team is better than the other by a lot. I think that they are very equal, but I still think the Chiefs might be the team to beat in this game. What are your initial thoughts about this game?
First off, like you said, you brought up the stat. Both teams had equal amount of points, equal amount of wins and losses. If you really want to look at their divisions that they played in, yes, almost everybody except for I think the Commanders made it to the playoffs for the NFC East. But if you look at really the talent level of each division, I would say it's pretty similar. I would go the only people that might be a little bit better are the Cowboys within the NFC East, but I didn't think the Giants were outstanding by any means. I didn't think the Commanders were really any good. The problem is they all play each other twice a year. And when you have mediocre teams playing each other, you never know who's going to win. And that was also I think how the Eagles were able to pad some of those stats. They were able to play teams that were at a lower tier. And on paper, yeah, they looked great. The Cowboys might have been, what were they, 12 and 5?
I don't know, because they had a rough patch at one point in the year, but they weren't that great.
Yeah, I believe. 1 second, sorry. I believe they were 12 and 5 going into the playoffs, but they were not. I mean, their defense great. Their offense wasn't good. CeeDee Lamb was about the only thing. Dak Prescott is not a good quarterback. And yet the Eagles were able to come in, get to play them twice, get to play the Commanders twice, get to play the Giants twice, when they're superiorly better. I mean, they are head and shoulders above all 3 of those teams. The best quarterback the Eagles have played all year, and I'm probably going off a little farther early on than you wanted to, but the best team that they played all year, the best quarterback they really played all year, was an Aaron Rodgers on a horrible Green Bay Packers team and Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, that actually leads into my first point. The Philadelphia Eagles haven't played anybody. Now, I'm not trying to take away from their schedule and all their wins this season, but you talked about how Dak Prescott struggled this year. He went into a game against the Eagles and dropped 40 on that defense. So I'm just saying that the Eagles have never faced anything like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're overrated, but who have they beat?
No, and that's kind of what my whole point was, is I think they had a very easy schedule to be where they're at. And people can say, oh, every team in their division went to the playoffs. And I'm like, but every team in that division had to play every other team in that division besides the Eagles, who they all lost to. Other than that, everybody was very mediocre and were able to pad their own stats, as well as also having very weak schedules themselves. So, and don't get me wrong, I am not taking away from anything of the accomplishments of A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, who I think is coming along in this league fantastically. He is somebody, and Jalen Hurts, you know my rule. What is my rule, Mike? You never draft an Alabama quarterback. But guess what? Jalen Hurts didn't go to Alabama. He learned how to play quarterback in Oklahoma, okay?
Technicalities, baby.
That's where he learned to play. That's where he learned to play. The old Boomer Sooner over there. That's where he learned to be an actual quarterback, not a Saban system head. So he's progressed fantastically. Also, obviously, you got to give credit to the fact that this is the first Super Bowl ever, which actually really blows my mind as long as I've been watching football, that 2 black quarterbacks are going against each other in the Super Bowl. I could have sworn that's already happened, but I'm obviously wrong. And if there's anything everybody knows about me, Blake's never been wrong ever in his entire life. So
well documented. It's never happened.
So, but no, so all give credit to them. Obviously, their defense is fantastic as well. You got Brandon Graham out there. You got a lot of guys on the defensive side. I just think that on paper and And in the matchups, when I look at straight matchups one-on-one, I just think the Chiefs have the winning product on the field in almost every position.
It's funny you say that because CBS Sports, I think, came out with like the top 20 players by ranking, and the Chiefs had like 3 of the top 10 players. And those guys were like obviously Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones.
Yeah.
But they are arguably better at every single important position than the Eagles. Patrick Mahomes is just better than Jalen Hurts. And I'm not trying to say that Jalen Hurts is a scrub, but he's just not better. Andy Reid is a better head coach than Nick Sirianni. Travis Kelce is a better tight end than any receiver they have on that team. Chris Jones is a better defensive player than anybody the Eagles have on that defensive line. And that is no disrespect to the Eagles defensive line. They led the league in sacks this year. They had 4 guys get 10 sacks apiece. Like they were absolutely absurd. Like you had Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. Like they're a really good pass rush. But I think when you look at it and you really boil it down, the Chiefs might not be the better overall team, but they're better at more important positions. And if you have a better quarterback and a better head coach, I think you're going to have a better chance to win the whole game.
Yeah, I think if you look at the important positions, if I had to break it down by just skill positions on the offensive side alone, I'm going to go, obviously, Patrick Mahomes is going to be better than – why am I blanking on his name?
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts, wow. I wanted to say young, but he's still in college at Alabama for some reason. So Jalen Hurts over Patrick Mahomes? No, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce, I'm not even sure the Eagles tight end right now.
Dallas Goedert, and he's actually been kind of balling.
Dallas Goedert actually kind of looks similar to me in a different alternate universe. So, no.
The metaverse?
Yeah, the metaverse.
Okay.
Our avatars are the same. No, Travis Kelce has the upper hand. I will give the upper hand to a better wide receiver, I think, in A.J. Brown over Juju Smith-Schuster. I think A.J. had a much more productive year. I mean, he had some monster games. There are different types of receivers, obviously. As far as how well they mesh with their quarterback, I think it is even, but I'm going to give the talent level and at least production level right now to A.J. Brown. Offensive line, I think it's kind of a toss-up. Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce are 2 of the best at their position. But so is Creed Humphrey, so is Trey Smith, and so is Joe Tooney. So it's one of those where like that the line I can give you a toss up on. If you wanted to move over to the defensive side, you have Nick Bolton. They got Brandon Graham. I think our defensive backs personally are better. I think McDuffie is a stud. Jarius Sneed's a stud. And the rookies, Watson and Williams have stepped up tremendously. So it's one of those where you can see it going back and forth depending on what position you take. On the offensive side, again, you're going to have one of the best offenses going up against one of the best defenses. I don't know if you can say it the other way. I don't think the Chiefs on paper, again, it's just kind of weird. They're clearly one of the best offenses as well, but I think the Chiefs match up so well at the things that they tend to do well. I didn't even talk about the running back position. Isaiah Pacheco, in my opinion, is a better running back than Miles Sanders. I think he offers more to the table. Miles Sanders is a good running back. Do not get that twisted. I just think the longevity, the different type of run styles, I think Pacheco is a little bit nastier.
That's fair. And one thing that, some of the DBs that the Eagles have, they're good, but it's easy to pad your stats when you're in a division like the NFC East and you're going up against quarterbacks like Danny Dimes. And again, I'm not saying the Eagles have a bad unit. I think that I actually have the number 1 pass defense, but I would argue that the Chiefs have the same amount of talent. They just don't have the names in the secondary. I mean, you got guys like Jalen Watson, who was a 7th-round draft pick, and Joshua Williams, who was like a 4th-round draft pick, stepping up and playing meaningful snaps in conference championship games. So, yeah, they might not have the name value to them, but they're very talented. And that unit overall, I think is a lot closer to the Eagles defense than people want to give them credit for.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and if you look at the division they played in, look at it. Who are they playing against? Danny Dimes? Okay. Danny Dimes averages what? Maybe 200 yards a game? Maybe. Okay, you're going to have great stats on that day. Then you play Dak Prescott for at least one game of the season because he couldn't stay healthy. Dak Prescott led the league in interceptions, and he only played 12 games. Tell me how the fuck that happens.
Exactly. And who is the Commanders quarterback this year? Was it Taylor Heineke?
Heineke, went, you name it. It was everybody under the sun. So they had 6 games in which they weren't playing any good competition. And so obviously they're going to have, and then again, when we talked about Aaron Rodgers and Trevor Lawrence are the two best quarterbacks they played, they didn't play anybody who had a substantial quarterback. They never played anybody like Patrick Mahomes. They didn't even play a Brock Purdy.
That brings up my next point. The Eagles have faced no adversity in this playoff run. They faced Danny Dimes at home, absolutely smoked him. And then in the NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy got hurt. Was it Josh Johnson who came in? Never heard of him until this game.
Really?
He got injured, and then they had to bring Brock Purdy back in the game, and he couldn't throw the damn ball. So they haven't faced nobody. And once you have a breathing quarterback that can throw the football more than 10 yards, I want to see what the Eagles react. I don't know how they're going to react.
Well, they haven't played anybody that has the ability to break their spirit. You know how demoralizing it is when you're on 3rd and 11, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 9, and consistently Patrick Mahomes can get you a first down in positions that he thrives in. If you look at the numbers on his 3rd and longs, those are some of his highest rating passing downs in the entire NFL and in the entire NFL history. That man thrives in situations where the defense is edging to get off the field, and they can't, and they have to redo it because you get a Travis Kelce for 3rd and 15. You get a Juju Smith for 3rd and 10. You get a Pacheco on a screen pass who takes it for 50. It's the ability to break a defense's spirit, and they haven't had to face that yet. And I know this, I'm trying to look at this objectively because I still sit here and I'm nervous for the game. I'm very nervous. Obviously, we cover the Chiefs. Obviously, we're going to be a little bit homer and biased. I'm trying not to be biased. I'm trying to look at this as a genuine game between two of the best teams in the NFL, which is not always what you get. And that's what I'm glad we got to see this season. Last year, we had the Rams and the Bengals. That was a crapshoot. That was such a shit game. You know why? Because it wasn't the best two teams in the NFL. Rams, very good. Bengals, I thought kind of lucked into a perfect situation that allowed them to get into a game that they were way over their heads in. This year, you have best on best for the Super Bowl, best quarterback versus best quarterback in the Super Bowl, best at a lot of different positions, and it's going to be exciting. But again, going back to it, I just think that the offensive play calling for Andy Reid and the best player in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes, are going to be so hard to handle for a team that hasn't even sniffed a game or player like that this year.
When think about how much Andy Reid wants to win this game. He got kicked out of Philadelphia. That fan base still hates him. He wants to win this game more than anything. And Patrick Mahomes, I mean, this is a legacy game. We talk about it all the time, but if he can win this game, winning his 2nd Super Bowl in 5 seasons, this is GOAT shit. This is literally like putting yourself in the upper echelon of quarterbacks all time. He's played in the league 5 years as a starter, and we're having this conversation if he wins this game. And as you mentioned, the Eagles have never faced anybody to the caliber of Patrick Mahomes. And I think that adversity in sports is so important. I look back at the 2020 Chiefs. That team ran through the league. Nobody stopped them. They when they lost, they chose to lose. And then you face the Bucs. They punched them in the mouth, and they collapsed. Granted, there were some circumstances that weren't going in the Chiefs' favor, but I think it's a very easy comparison to make because the Eagles have not struggled this year. Outside of Jalen Hurts getting injured, they ran through everybody, and part of it's their schedule, but they have not really had any adversity. And once you get hit, can you respond? If Patrick Mahomes gets down by 15 in this game, I'm not sweating because we've seen him come back time after time after time in the playoffs. But if Jalen Hurts goes down by 15, I don't know what he can do.
Yeah, what's the great Rocky quote? It's not about how hard you hit somebody. It's about how hard you can get hit and get up and keep on moving. That is what the Chiefs have shown. I mean, it seems like every other week the Chiefs showed something down by 10, down by 12, down by 15, down by 9 going into half. And almost at no point, because Patrick Mahomes has been able to do this since the beginning that he stepped on the field, you don't panic. Which, you know what happens when the fans aren't panicking? If the fans aren't panicking, guess who's definitely not panicking? The team, the players, the guys standing in the huddle next to him. They're not panicking because they know, hey, man, we've been here before. We know exactly what to do. As long as we do what we need to do, execute how we can execute, Pat's going to lead us to the promised land because it takes everybody. But when you're able to kind of let go of that mental anxiety, into that mental worriedness of, oh my God, now I have to do something above and beyond to try to get us back in this game, that's when you start messing up because you're almost, it's kind of weird. It's going to sound odd saying this, but when you're trying too hard and trying to do more than just your job, that's when you start making mistakes.
You
And
start pressing.
you see it time and time again. So what happens is Mahomes has instilled in everybody, listen, just do your job. You don't have to make a one-handed catch and do a double flip into the end zone. I don't need you to make 2 interceptions on back-to-back plays. I just need you to take your man. I just need you to run a crisp route, and I'll be able to find you the ball. And we're going to lead this team back, but we have to do our jobs. That's something that is learned. It's not something that is taught. It is something that is learned through experience.
Blake, the Chiefs have been in this game 3 times in the last 5 years. The Eagles, I mean, outside of Jason Kelsey and a couple other guys like Lane Johnson, they have not been in this game. So that speaks volumes to the culture that the Chiefs have built.
Well,
and that's going to play a huge factor.
Not only that, think about not just the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs have been as an organization. Think about how many players for the Chiefs. This is their 3rd time in the Super Bowl. You have, let's go down the list. You have Patrick Mahomes. You have Travis Kelsey, Chris Jones. You have L'Jarius Sneed. You have Juan Thornhill. Even though I don't know if Juan Thornhill played.
He played. He won a Super Bowl and he's played in another one.
Yeah, you have Thornhill. You have Noddy. You have Saunders. Like, you have a core group of guys who this is not their first rodeo. It's not even their second rodeo. At this point, they have, at this point, check this out. Michael Darcy, check this out. At this point, the guys playing in this game have earned the league veteran minimum just in Super Bowl appearances.
It's absurd. It's the kind of experience that you can't buy that experience. It's incredible. And I do think experience is going to play a factor in this game, whether it's Mahomes versus the Eagles defense or Andy Reid versus Nick Sirianni. I might be a Nick Sirianni hater, but I think Andy Reid's going to do circles around that guy.
I would like to think so. You know, the thing I'll never count out about the Chiefs is for some odd reason, not some odd reason, but for some reason, everybody wants to give the Chiefs the biggest right hook they possibly can. Every team we play, they're not just playing another football game. They're trying to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, which we have now had a target on our back for the last 3 or 4 years. And it seems like every game we play, we are getting the best out of every team we play. So I'm not expecting a blowout by any means. I think this will be a somewhat close game. In fact, I could see it coming down to another field goal situation. Let's hope Butker's leg is feeling good. But I'm never going to say, and just from watching the Chiefs so much, they're a team that is going to get the best out of anybody they play. So it's all about getting an early jump. I think that's one of the things the Chiefs struggle with is hopping out to an early lead and then keeping their foot on the pedal. It seems like they like to rev it a couple times, off and on and off and on and off and on. And that's when teams start to find the little holes in the gap. It's Andy Reid punching them in the mouth, scoring first, scoring loud, playing knockdown defense off the rip, and then keeping that gas pedal forward.
Exactly. And listen, this is an initial thoughts video. This isn't a breakdown. This isn't a preview. Ironically enough, the Chiefs blowing out the Eagles, I don't think is the most unrealistic possibility. I think the Chiefs have a way better chance of smoking the Eagles than the Eagles do of smoking the Chiefs. And it's not even that close.
100%. 100%. Yeah. I mean, unless something catastrophic was to happen, and even if that was the case, put the game in Chad Henne's hands, and Chiefs fans still believe Chad can do this.
Listen. I love Chad. I love Chad, but no way in hell. There's no way.
Well, I do, because then the defense steps up. Because then they have to win the game, and that's when Chris Jones takes over the game. All Henne has to do is facilitate the offense. And you've seen he obviously can clearly do it. Pat goes down. He goes down for a 98-yard touchdown. He gets us a playoff win against the Browns last year.
Listen, if Chad Henne comes in this game and has to will this team to victory, and God help us if he does. Let's just say that he does somehow, some way win this game for the Kansas City Chiefs. Give him the Supermax. Give him whatever he wants. Does he want to be the mayor of Kansas City? Kick Quinn Lucas out.
Give him
He
whatever.
doesn't need to. He does not have to have that position. Chad Henne could get whatever he wants in this city.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That would be wild.
I hope that does not happen.
Yeah, that
I hope
would
we
be.
don't see that. And I'm not
Oh,
even
man.
saying the Chiefs couldn't blow out the Eagles. I just don't. I don't see it as the likelihood. I wouldn't put money on a blowout.
I wouldn't either. I think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a field goal game. I think it's going to be like 6 or 7 points, and probably the last team that touches the ball is going to win. Like, I think both offenses are going to put up 25 to 30 points, and it's going to be a relatively high scoring game. You know, both defenses have a really good pass rush, but both teams also have a decent offensive line. So I think they're going to kind of stagnate in that area. And so it's really going to be an offensive game. And the way the Eagles play defense, they play a lot of zone. And one thing that we should be looking at in this game is what Travis Kelce does to that soft zone, because it might be a war crime in like 7 countries. I think he could manipulate that defense. He might go off for 150 yards.
Yeah, this is a game that I think both Kelsey brothers have an extra oomph on their shoulder for. I would not be surprised to see Jason Kelsey have 10 fucking pancakes. Granted, he's going to be going against Chris Jones, so I don't think he's pancaking Chris Jones. Might get naughty a couple times, maybe get Saunders, maybe get an off block on somebody like Clemens or something. But Travis Kelce, on the other hand, I can easily see him going 107 with 107 for 2 yards.
Easy. Maybe the first half.
Yeah, it's just one of those where he plays so well. There is not a single person in the NFL who can cover him. The only person I would even say did a decent job is Derwin James.
Yeah.
The only player who did relatively good against Travis Kelce, and he still torches him. I mean, there's nobody. He's the best tight end in the league. He's one of the best tight ends of all time. It's not even a question. He's so dangerous. And Pat against the zone in general is dangerous. So, again, that's why this is so interesting, because the things that the Eagles do well, the Chiefs know how to beat. And I think that the things that the Chiefs do well, or maybe not do as well, the Eagles probably have something they can beat on. So it's so exciting, because I think it's going to be all fireworks. I don't think it's going to be a boring game. It's not going to be like a 10-6 game or something stupid. It's going to be 23-34. It's going to be, 42-38, like something weird like that. So I'm excited, man.
Well, one thing that you mentioned is that Patrick Mahomes is good against soft zone. The Eagles could not stop him last year. Granted, these are 2 different teams, but we are very accustomed to seeing Patrick Mahomes shred really good defenses. The Niners in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Earlier this year against the Niners, they were the best defense, and he went into Santa Clara and dropped like 40 on their head. And so I don't really care how good their defense is. Patrick Mahomes in that offense is going to rise to the challenge. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm also so confident. The Chiefs elevate their game to play the best. When they are in the biggest games possible, they show up. And so I think that's why, as a Chiefs fan, I'm so confident, because they show up for these big games. And the Eagles, it's yet to be seen.
Yeah. It's a waiting game for the Eagles. It's really a jack in the box. Who knows what's going to happen? What team are they going to get? I think the Chiefs right now are rolling so heavy. They also have the experience, and that takes them so far. The thing that I want to ask you, Michael, is what position group has the biggest challenge for both teams this game?
I'll give you an offense and defense. Offense is going to be the Chiefs' offensive line. I think if the Chiefs' offensive line can kind of keep that pass rush at bay, you're going to have the best chance to win. Given Pat's ankle health, we need to keep him upright. And even if he's just standing in the pocket, he's a better quarterback than 95% of the quarterbacks in this league. And defensively, I think the linebackers are going to be crucial, but I really want to know what our DBs are going to do against like A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and some of the other wide receivers they have. And can our linebackers stop the run? And I guess my final overarching point to all of that, health is going to be maybe the biggest factor in this game, because right now I think the Eagles have everybody healthy for this game. And we're starting to see the Chiefs say that everybody's okay. Like L'Jarius Sneed cleared concussion protocol. Willie Gay's been practicing. Kadarius Toney's been practicing. Juju's been practicing. Mecole's actually out of this game. But you're starting to see guys practice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% ready to go. So I think health's going to play a big factor, but I'm going to flip the question on you. What do you think is the biggest offensive and defensive factor for this game?
Well, I agree with you. I'm going to go both teams. So I agree with you on the first one. I think offensive line is the biggest struggle for the Chiefs. That's going to be the biggest gameplay. If they can not only run block, which they don't usually have an issue with, it's the pass blocking. You're going to go up against the most formidable pass rush you've really seen all year. You've seen a couple really good ones. Denver tends to have a good pass rush. The 49ers have a good pass rush. You go up against really good – the Chargers have a good pass rush. So you're going up against good guys. But I think if they can lock down the interior and Orlando Brown can have the game of the year, not even the game of his life, just the game of the year for him, they're going to be in very good cruise control. And going over to the defensive side, I'm going to stick on the line. I think the defensive line they have the most pressure, but they've also been doing the best. I think they have to continue to pressure with Clark, Clemens, Chris Jones. I mean, they continue.
Clemens isn't on the team.
Sorry,
I think you're thinking of.
My bad. I said Clemens earlier too. I meant my bad. Is
Clemens got released and the Bengals picked him up. Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Story.
Sorry, I did that earlier too.
You're good. Carlos Dunlap is who you meant to say.
Yes, that's who I meant to say. If those guys can keep the pressure on, Frank Clark has 11.5 sacks in 12 career playoff games. That's fucking insane. Okay,
Chris Jones, so bad normally. He's so bad.
Jones, I mean, he's going to go down as one of the greatest of all time in the postseason.
Yeah.
Chris Jones finally gets 2 sacks now. I thought he would have had 2.5. I think the stats kind of got a little fudged on one of them, but he's got 2.5, or he's got 2 sacks in 2 games. Great. He needs to dominate. He dominated a couple of those games. That Bengals game, he was an unstoppable force. Those guys need to continue because Jalen Hurts, I don't think, is quite the quarterback that can operate with somebody in his face. I'd also love to see them make him get out of the pocket. I'm not worried about his running ability. Let him take off for a couple because I don't know how good he is at throwing on the run. We saw what he did last week in a game where they won, but he didn't even do – his stats were not impressive. You looked at his stats and then it wasn't impressive to me. So I think if you could get him a little flustered from the defensive line side, you're going to end up being pretty good.
Well, it's funny that you say that because Jalen Hurts, before that shoulder injury, was playing a lot better than he has recently.
Yes.
Since he came back, he's averaging 6 yards per attempt and only 2.96 yards per carry. So there has been somewhat of a drop-off since he's returned from that shoulder injury. And I think that's something the Chiefs need to target. And I completely agree that the defensive line is going to be one of the biggest factors in this game, maybe the biggest factor. If Frank Clark can get another couple sacks and Chris Jones can have the game of his life like he did against the Bengals, the Chiefs will win this game. And I'm just very confident right now going into this game that if we see the Chiefs play the Bengals or play this team like they played the Bengals, they're going to be just fine because really I think the Bengals were the Chiefs' biggest challenge, so to speak. I mean, they'd beaten them 3 times previously. It kind of just felt like they couldn't get past the Bengals, and they finally did. So I'm not trying to say the Eagles aren't challenging, but the Bengals were kind of that one team that we could just never beat, and then we did. So I was terrified of the Bengals. I'm not terrified of the Eagles whatsoever.
I think everybody kind of owns that same sentiment. And honestly, I want to give my hats off to Steve Spagnuolo because what he has drawn up in the blitz factor in this postseason compared to what we didn't see in the regular season has been phenomenal. I mean, Joe Burrow was running for his life all over at that AFC Championship game that, guess what? We were both at. So kudos to us for getting to see an awesome AFC Championship game. But hats off to Spags. It'll really come down to how does Andy really prep. Obviously, a lot on the line. It's a Kelsey versus Kelsey Super Bowl. It's a Philly versus Andy Super Bowl. I mean, there's so many things here that are cool storylines. And at the end of the day, it'll be exciting to watch, but I think it's going to end up on the Chiefs' favor.
You hit the nail right on the head. And this was just an initial thoughts video. And I think that we talked about all the storylines between Andy Reid versus his former team and the Kelsey Bowl and Patrick Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts. I think we covered it all. So, Blake, my final question for you, the most important question, is where can the people find you?
Where can people find me? All right, so I got my link right here. This is my Twitter. This is probably where I do most of my videos or most of my interactions. Wake in Blake 29. That's Wake capital N Blake 29 on the Twitter sphere. You can find me at Ginger Pants 29 on Instagram. I also, as Michael known as Michael used to be one of my partners in crime. I do quite a bit of football coverage and mixed martial arts coverage. So anything UFC, dabbling into some of the other organizations as well, but really UFC, you can find me over there. I do all the post-fight shows for a website called Fight Bananas. You can find them on Facebook and YouTube. And that is where most of my content is. And every once in a while, you might be able to catch me on Sports Radio 610 during the midday show. So
yeah, it's kind of crazy how we both started working at 810 and then you went to greener pastures and we're both killing it. But yeah, maybe tune into 610. You might hear him on the midday show.
Yeah.
So guys, I really appreciate Blake for coming on. We killed this video as always. You guys can find my stuff, the website, kcsportsreport.com, Instagram, KC_sportsreport, and Twitter at KCsportsreport. All of Blake's stuff will be linked in the description of this video. Until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video, and go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs!